Have you ever wondered if what we call love is sometimes just fear of being alone? Think about it. Many people rush into relationships not because they feel whole, but because the silence of being with themselves feels unbearable. That silence is powerful. When the noise of life fades, you are left with your own thoughts, your regrets, your desires, and for many that is terrifying. Instead of facing it, they fill the space with another person. Not always because they truly want that person, but because it feels easier than confronting themselves. This is why much of what we call love is actually avoidance. It is not about connection, it is about distraction. The relationship becomes a shield from loneliness rather than a bridge to real intimacy. And here is the problem. When love is built on fear, it becomes fragile. Every disagreement feels like a threat. Every moment of distance feels like abandonment. The relationship carries not just two lives, but also the unresolved emptiness inside each of them. That weight eventually cracks the glass. People sense this fragility, so they cling harder. They compromise away their values, silence their desires, and reshape themselves to keep the other person from leaving. That is not love. That is survival. The Stoics reminded us that the hardest chains to break are the ones we choose ourselves. Many choose them willingly, disguising them as romance, companionship, or completion. But deep down, something whispers that they were meant for more. If you have ever felt that whisper, that subtle discomfort that tells you that you are hiding from yourself, then you already know what I am talking about. From the moment we are children, a story begins to shape our minds. You grow up, meet someone, fall in love, and settle down. That is the script. It is told in bedtime stories, in movies, in the casual conversations of adults who ask, "When are you going to meet someone?" Little by little, this conditioning sinks in. By the time we are adults, we no longer question it. We carry the quiet belief that life without a partner is incomplete. You may build a career, travel, and learn new things, but in the back of your mind, you feel as if all of it is just a waiting room until you find someone. This belief is powerful because it makes people rush into relationships for the wrong reasons. They are not driven by readiness or self-knowledge. They are driven by duty to the story they were given. Carl Jung once said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That is why many people use relationships as a way to avoid this task. If someone else validates us, we do not need to validate ourselves. If someone else mirrors our worth, we do not need to define it on our own. The cost of this conditioning is high. It teaches us to equate being single with failure and being in a relationship with success. And because of that false equation, many tolerate disrespect, ignore red flags, or contort themselves to fit someone else's ideal. Anything feels safer than the shame of being alone. The Stoics often reminded themselves that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we attach to them. The judgment here is simple yet crushing. Alone equals failure. Together equals success. And under that belief, countless people live lives that do not reflect who they truly are. But here's the truth. Solitude is not emptiness. It is space. It is one of the few places where you can finally hear your own voice without distortion. At first, that voice may be filled with fear, doubt, or regret. But if you stay with it long enough, you begin to hear your values, your calling, your truth. Losing yourself in a relationship does not happen in one big moment. It happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. At first, it looks harmless. You compromise on small things like where to eat, what to watch, how to spend the weekend. That feels normal. That feels like partnership. But then the compromises grow. You stop saying certain things because you know they will not be understood. You hold back dreams because they create tension. You soften parts of your personality, not because you want to, but because you fear being fully yourself might cost you the relationship. Over time, the person you were becomes harder to recognize. You are still there on the surface, but deep inside, something has faded. You laugh less the way you once did. You hesitate before speaking your truth. You live in constant negotiation with yourself, always adjusting to preserve the bond. This is not growth. It is erosion. And the tragedy is that most people do not even notice it happening. They convince themselves that it is normal, that this is the price of love, that this is what it takes to keep someone. But the price is far higher than they realize. What they are giving away is their authenticity, their creativity, their very aliveness. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that it is not death we should fear, but never beginning to live. And many stop truly living the moment they become afraid of losing someone. Love, when it is rooted in fear, demands silence where honesty should exist. It demands smallness where growth should happen. A healthy love does the opposite. It allows you to stand taller, not shrink smaller. It makes you more of yourself, not less. But when fear is the foundation, love becomes a contract of unspoken conditions. Do not be too much. Do not change too quickly. Do not disturb the balance, even if that balance is suffocating you. This is why so many relationships feel heavy instead of freeing. They are not built on truth, but on the constant effort to avoid conflict, to avoid abandonment, to avoid silence. And in that effort, people abandon themselves long before they are ever abandoned by another. Solitude often feels uncomfortable in the beginning. The quiet can seem too loud. You notice thoughts you have been burying under noise. Regrets resurface. Doubts grow sharper. At first, you may think this is emptiness, but it is not emptiness. It is truth showing itself. If you stay with that silence long enough, something begins to shift. The discomfort softens into clarity. You start to hear your own voice again, unfiltered by expectations. You discover which dreams are truly yours and which were borrowed from others. You feel the pull toward parts of yourself you had forgotten. This is the gift of solitude. It is not punishment, it is practice. It is where you learn to belong to yourself before belonging to anyone else. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that you always have power over your mind, no matter what happens outside. Solitude makes that power visible. Without the constant presence of another person's moods and needs, you begin to notice your own rhythm. Your joy stops depending on someone else's happiness. Your peace no longer collapses under someone else's storm. This is what emotional independence looks like. It is not coldness. It is steadiness. It is the ability to hold yourself. When you reach this stage, relationships stop being about filling a void. They become about sharing abundance. You are not looking for someone to rescue you from yourself. You are choosing someone to walk beside you because you want to, not because you need to. This is where sovereignty begins. Sovereignty means you belong to yourself fully. It means you stop negotiating your truth away for the comfort of others. It means your life becomes your own signature, not a copy of someone else's script. The price of sovereignty is not small. You give up the comfort of automatic affection, the predictable rhythm of shared plans, the reassurance of always having someone beside you. There will be nights when silence feels heavy, mornings when you wish there was someone to lean on, but the reward is freedom. Epictetus once said that no one is free who is not master of himself. Solitude becomes the training ground for that mastery. You learn to face your doubts without distraction, to hold your ground when no one is there to steady you, to take full ownership of your choices. The world will not always understand this freedom. It prefers predictability. It prefers people who fit the script, who follow the same milestones, who do not disturb the pattern. But when you choose sovereignty, you no longer live for approval. You live from your own center. And that is why sovereignty feels so rare. It cannot be given. It cannot be taken. It must be earned. And once you taste it, you realize there is no going back. The comfort of dependence will always tempt you, but it will never outweigh the quiet strength of knowing you belong completely to yourself. Independence often unsettles people. When you step outside the script, society does not know where to place you, so it uses labels: lonely, selfish, incomplete. These words are not about you. They are about the discomfort your freedom creates in others. The system thrives on dependence because dependence is stable. A person who feels incomplete without a partner is easier to predict, easier to guide, easier to sell to. Independence threatens that structure. If you no longer need validation to feel whole, you become harder to manage. Your choices are not dictated by fear of being left out or abandoned. They are yours alone. That is why sovereignty is often misjudged. If you live fully without leaning on the approval of others, people may call it isolation. If you protect your boundaries, they may call it selfishness. If you reject the belief that love is the only measure of success, they may call you incomplete. But these are reflections of their conditioning, not your truth. The irony is that many who criticize independence secretly want it for themselves. They sense the compromises they have made. Your freedom shines a light on the parts of them they abandoned. It is easier for them to dismiss you than than to confront that truth. So when you are misunderstood, remember this: the labels say more about the fear of others than they do about your life. Sovereignty does not mean rejecting love or connection. It transforms them. Once you belong to yourself, every relationship you enter is built on choice, not need. You do not cling to avoid silence. You do not shrink to keep the peace. You bring your whole self uncut and unshaken. This changes the quality of your connections. Love becomes deeper because it is given freely. Friendship becomes richer because it is not built on dependence. Creativity becomes sharper because you are no longer editing yourself for approval. Solitude also reveals a rhythm that nurtures creation. Without the constant pull of another person's expectations, you enter flow more easily. You follow ideas without interruption. You explore thoughts without the pressure to explain them. In that freedom, originality flourishes. This is why so many thinkers and creators throughout history have sought solitude, not to reject people, but to protect the fragile beginnings of their ideas until they were strong enough to face the world. Seneca once said that we must take breaks from the world and withdraw into ourselves, not as avoidance, but as preservation. When you create from this space, the work carries your true signature. It is not shaped by imitation or by the weight of what will be praised. It is raw. It is honest. It is yours. Independence changes the way you move through the world. At first, it can feel heavy. You are fully responsible for your choices. There is no one to hide behind when you avoid the hard work, no one to split the blame with when things go wrong. But there is also no one to hold you back when your instincts are sharp and your vision is clear. Sovereignty demands that you confront yourself fully. You see your flaws, your blind spots, your excuses, and in that clarity, you only have two choices. You either change or you accept yourself as you are without running from it. Both are difficult. Both are powerful. Over time, the silence that once felt like emptiness starts to feel like home. You no longer wake up needing someone else to steady you. You stop checking for approval before taking action. You stop waiting for permission to live. That steadiness is the quiet power of independence. The Stoics often reminded themselves that true freedom is not about controlling the outside world. It is about mastering your own mind. And when you stop outsourcing your peace to others, you realize you already have everything you need to stand strong. This changes not only how you see yourself, but how you connect with others. You are no longer looking for someone to complete you. You are looking for someone who expands you. Love stops being a way to escape loneliness. It becomes a way to share abundance. True freedom does not make you untouchable. You will still feel pain, longing, and loss, but these no longer shatter you because you know you will never lose yourself with them. You have stood in silence before, and you have survived. You have met yourself fully, and you trust that self more than you trust the noise of outside opinion. This is the paradox of sovereignty. The more you belong to yourself, the more freely you can give yourself to others. The more whole you are alone, the more authentic you are in connection. And perhaps this is the deepest truth. You were never half of anything. You were never waiting to be completed. You have always been whole. The task is not to find someone who fills you, but to strip away the noise that convinces you otherwise. Once you discover this, you cannot return to a life where your peace depends on another. You cannot go back to shrinking, negotiating, or silencing yourself for love that was never truly love. You begin to protect your independence fiercely, not as a wall against others, but as the foundation that makes every connection richer, deeper, and truer. The greatest freedom you will ever know is the moment you realize you are already whole. Protect that truth, live by it, and never let the world convince you otherwise.